Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber make a comment which I'm going to flip in here, and this is going to go into a much deeper topic when it comes to this whole idea of supplements and muscle growth and everything else. He basically kind of argued with me that branched chain amino acids are useful, they're beneficial, and I'm like, no, they're the same thing as food. There's no benefit whatsoever to supplementing branched chain amino acids versus just eating an extra bite of steak, chicken, Greek yogurt, whatever. All these branched chain amino acid rich foods. There's not necessarily a reason or benefit for you to isolate it. And he then goes on to point out that burn victims in the ICU are given BCAAs, and that proves that they're superior to food, without even considering the context or why they're given this. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about this. All right, guys, this is the sort of logic the supplement industry uses to sell you stuff that you don't need, and let's explain what's going on here. People look at something like that and they'll be like, aha, this is used medically. It's used on burn victims, therefore it's superior. They wouldn't be using it medically if it wasn't superior, right? Without thinking about the context or how they administer it or anything. First of all, a lot of people aren't aware. Burn victims are not consuming branched chain amino acids. They're not mixing it in a drink and drinking it. They're being given it through an IV. And there's a reason for this. What people need to understand, the people who are given cocktails like this of things, of various drugs, amino acids, and IVs and everything else, who are in the ICU from severe full body burns. What you have to understand is that these are people who have been, their body has been so devastated and traumatized that they cannot move. They're completely sedentary with large amounts of destructive tissue damage all over their body. Muscle, skin, everything has literally been burned off of their body. They're in excruciating pain. Their GI tract barely even works. They're usually stuck on morphine, pain meds, and kept unconscious most of the time because they are in agonizing pain. They can't move, and the mere act of digesting food could even slow down their healing process. Their body is so traumatized that could slow down the healing process. So what they do tube feed them. They usually have a tube down their throat to get some calories in them, and they keep them on amino acid and glucose drips around the clock to get calories, nutrients into them, and they also pump them full of anabolic steroids. All right, that's also standard for these people because they have had muscle burned off. There is burns into their muscle tissue. They can't move. When you're sedentary and bedbound, you start losing muscle rapidly. Anyways, they're already in a state of losing muscle. They've had muscle burned off. And if they don't get these people regrowing this lost muscle tissue using drugs and amino acids and everything else and regrowing skin, they're going to have more scar tissue. And that scar tissue is going to build up and prevent them from regrowing some of this lost tissue. They have to regrow lost tissue on these traumatized people as rapidly as human possible without risking killing them, because otherwise they're going to be even more maimed for the rest of their life. The faster they can regrow damaged tissue and repair it and heal it, the more mobile and functional these people are going to be later. They're already going to be somewhat ruined for the rest of their life, but they're just trying to minimize it. And by doing that, they can put amino acids in their bloodstream that they can't even digest. They're taking it away from their body having to digest food, because remember, it takes energy to digest food. That takes energy away from the healing process on these people. All right, that's how traumatized they are. Their needs are so far beyond a bodybuilder or someone lifting weights. And the problem is, some people would argue, well, they wouldn't need to give them as many amino acids because the same anabolic signal all those branched chain amino acids give are also replicated by steroids. Yeah, but they don't give them massive doses. They give them what they can safely give them or get away with without hurting them. That's still going to be oftentimes a fifth or a sixth of what a bodybuilder would take. You're still talking about they're probably on 600 or 700 milligrams of stuff, maybe 1,000 total, depending on what they're doing and what combination of drugs they're giving them. And they're doing everything they can to help with nitrogen retention, speeding up healing. So they are pumping them full of amino acids through an IV. It's not even just through a tube, guys. The BCAAs that they give burn victims is through an IV that's hooked up to them around the clock. So you're comparing consuming food that already has branched chain amino acids versus supplementing it versus someone whose digestive system could actually slow down their healing because their body is so traumatized, and they're giving it to them through an IV. All right, this is IV fed BCAAs. This is not what they're not consuming it as a supplement. This is a drug going through a needle 24 hours a day into their body concurrently with anabolic steroids and a whole cocktails of drugs. All right. The difference is when you compare that to the average person who's lifting weights, you can digest food. You can eat. You have no trouble eating a bite of steak to get some branched chain amino acids. You could eat a half a steak every day or a whole chicken breast every day without a problem. But almost all of you can do that, I assure you, to get easily the amount of branched chain amino acids in your diet that they're having to try to pump into people through an IV. Now, they're probably giving them more because they're trying to maximize the anabolic signal here. But again, you don't need what they need. There is no way that your body is even capable of growing muscle tissue from lifting weights at the rate that they need to repair tissue on these traumatized people to save them. Sometimes to save their life, sometimes just to save their mobility and ability to move later, to cut down on how disfigured they are. They're having to regrow tissue on these people with combinations of drugs, IVs, everything, faster than you're going to gain it from lifting weights. And there is not one single shred of evidence that supplementing branched chain amino acids in your diet over just eating foods that contain them in similar amounts will put a single ounce of muscle on you. So this idea of saying, well, they must work because they use it medically is insane. That's taken completely out of context. That's just like when people talked about the big hype with glutamine, because glutamine was prescribed in large doses for certain things medically. So therefore glutamine's amazing. No, glutamine barely reaches your bloodstream when you consume it. Your GI tract absorbed all of it, and the cells of your intestines actually use it. They use it to grow, they use it to heal themselves, they use it for fuel. Less than 2% of glutamine that you consume orally gets to your actual bloodstream. Your GI tract takes it up and keeps it. So why is it prescribed? Because it helps with healing of the intestinal lining. So the reason glutamine was prescribed was because of people who had just had surgery on their colon or their intestine. They were given mega doses of glutamine in prescription form, not just little 5 grams. They're given huge amounts because it speeds up the healing process of the intestine, because the intestinal linings tend to soak it all up and keep it, and they use it for fuel and for building blocks. It's not going to your muscle tissue. It's not even going to the muscle tissue for the people who are being prescribed large amounts of it medically. It's a post-op thing for certain types of surgeries as far as your colon and intestine and things go. So again, that's a case of supplement industry and people saying, aha, something's being used medically, so it must be useful for us for building muscle. No, unless you just had surgery on your intestines, it's not useful to you at all. You know, the same thing when we look at like these branched chain amino acids. Are you walking around with an IV of them hooked up all day long? Is your immune system compromised? Are you sedentary? Have you lost the ability to chew food? Is your GI tract not working as well because of trauma to your body? If not, then what makes you think that these BCAAs done in IV form are going to be any better for you than normal food? Again, it's about context, people. Context. And it's just absurd the way that people think with this. And I know it's because they don't know any better and because they're fed hype by the supplement industry and people who don't understand the context in which these things are used. But that's where you need to do research. You don't just say, oh, aha, the medical industry uses this for something, so therefore it must be great for what I want to use it for. It must give me some advantage, so I'm going to go out and buy it. You got to stop and think these things through sometimes. Just because something is used medically for some reason doesn't mean that it's a product that you should buy to build muscle. And in fact, when you look at these in the context, there is no reason to think that you're going to build more muscle as a result of taking it. Only if you're running a deficient diet. I mean, are you a vegan who consumes 40 grams of protein a day? Okay, branched chain amino acids might be useful for you. But if you're a guy who sits around who eats 120 grams of protein every day, 150 grams of protein every day from various food sources, the odds that you're going to see any benefit from BCAAs is pretty slim. Again, there's only reason there are athletes in certain situations that might benefit from them in very, very small amounts. Again, we're talking that 0.5% advantage, not something noticeable, measurable in the mirror. But most of you are not doing the sort of training and level of training required to do this, meaning training multiple times a day, crisscrossing extreme endurance work with strength training in the same day. Things like that certain top-level athletes do. So if you're not doing that, again, to think that BCAAs are going to help you, unless you're a burn victim, a vegan on a very low-protein diet, or a hybrid athlete who trains 8 hours every day in multiple training sessions is a minor recovery aid in between those training sessions. All right, again, even in that case, you're not talking about a massive difference. You're not talking about a pound of muscle gained every year or something crazy like that. It's not that extreme. And that's what people need to understand with these things. But seriously, guys, just because something has a medical use and a medical purpose doesn't mean that if you use it outside of that medical purpose, that it's going to help you gain muscle. At the end of the day, guys, you need to remember branched chain amino acids, yes, they're necessary to build muscle. They're also found in almost every food that you eat. You can absolutely very easily get all the branched chain amino acids you need for a maximum metabolic signal from the leucine just from eating normal foods. It's not really that difficult. And I can assure you that most of you guys already consume way more protein than you actually need to even reach your goals. So worrying about supplementing additional amino acids, it's just protein, guys. That's the whole point. That's why you consume protein, is to get these amino acids. Thinking that you're going to benefit from supplementing any more is just the sort of nonsense that the supplement industry wants you to buy. It's not necessarily grounded in truth. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.